My name isn't important. But if you must know, I was the kind of woman who looked like she had it all. The husband, the suburban house, the smile people envied. But inside, I was a quiet storm no one heard. It started one ordinary Friday evening at a friend's corporate party in downtown Atlanta. The room smelled of whiskey, ambition, and artificial laughter. My husband had skipped the event, as usual, too tired from work, he'd said. So I went alone. That's where I met him. Ethan. He was not supposed to be anyone special, just a tall man in a gray suit, standing by the bar with that kind of smirk that could melt self-control. He noticed me before I noticed myself. "Looks like your drink could use some company," he said, eyes locking with mine. I laughed, too quickly, too nervously. Maybe because his voice had that low charm that made ordinary words sound sinful. We talked. About everything and nothing, marriage, music, life, loneliness. And somewhere between those words, I forgot I was someone's wife. When he touched my hand, it wasn't intentional. Or maybe it was. But the spark it sent through me wasn't just physical. It was something darker. A feeling I hadn't tasted in years, being seen. The night ended, but his presence didn't. He started texting, nothing dangerous at first. "Did you get home safe?" Then later, "I can't stop thinking about your laugh." And I responded. Because his messages filled the silence my marriage had become. A week later, I met him again. "Just coffee," I told myself. But when I walked into that cafe, and his eyes lit up like I was the only woman in the world, I knew I was already slipping. Somewhere halfway through our laughter, my phone buzzed, a text from my husband. "Don't forget to pick up dry cleaning." Ethan looked at my screen, then back at me. His smile faded slightly, and he whispered, "You don't look happy when his name shows up." And that was the moment something broke inside me. A small, invisible click, the sound of a door opening that should have stayed shut. By the time I realized it, it was too late. His hand brushed against mine again, and suddenly, I couldn't breathe right. I looked at him, and all I saw was temptation with a heartbeat. He looked at me, and all he saw was a woman who wanted to forget her vows. When we finally left the cafe, it was raining. He offered me his jacket, but when he slipped it around my shoulders, his fingers lingered at my neck. I froze, the thunder rolled, and I swear, even the rain paused to watch. That was the first time I let him kiss me. It was soft, wrong, and addictive. And it tasted like everything I'd been craving: danger, warmth, attention. I remember pulling away, trembling, whispering, "This is a mistake." He only smiled, leaned close, and said, "Then make it again." And I did. Somewhere between that kiss and the drive home, I knew. He had entered my life, and soon, he'd erase my peace. Loudspeaker, before I take you deeper into this confession, don't forget to subscribe. This is only the beginning of how I lost control, how my secrets drowned me. And how one man's touch ruined the calm I once called love. I never planned to let him stay in my world that long. But he had a way of lingering, like the scent of rain that refuses to fade after a storm. He wasn't supposed to call me again, yet he did. And foolishly, I answered. Every conversation felt like a slow addiction, soft, warm, and dangerous. He knew exactly when to say the right words, the ones that made my guard tremble. "You sound tired," he'd whisper. "Want me to come over?" I knew what that question meant. I knew what would happen if I said yes. But that night, my loneliness said yes before my conscience could stop me. When I opened the door, he stood there, hoodie over his head, holding a single rose. I laughed at the gesture, but inside, I melted. His eyes held mine like he was reading every secret I'd tried to bury. "You look like you needed this," he said, brushing his thumb across my cheek. That touch, that tiny, gentle touch, felt like a match struck in my chest. We didn't talk much that night. Words were useless. It was all body language, his hands tracing lines on my skin, my breath responding in uneven confessions. Somewhere between the silence and his heartbeat, I forgot I was someone's wife. Halfway through the night, guilt slipped in. Not enough to stop me, just enough to remind me how deep I'd fallen. I turned to him and said, "You're going to ruin me." He smiled, leaned closer, and whispered, "Maybe you needed to be ruined, to feel alive again." And I believed him. Because in that moment, I wasn't a wife. I wasn't someone's possession. I was just a woman rediscovering her pulse, one heartbeat, one reckless decision at a time. Soft voice tone. If you're still listening, baby, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Because sometimes, love stories like mine aren't about happiness, they're about the chaos we create while searching for it. I remember the first time he said my name like it was a secret. Soft, slow, almost trembling on his tongue. It was one of those nights when peace should have been sleeping beside me. But instead, guilt was sitting at the foot of my bed. I had no intention of seeing him again. But temptation has a way of whispering louder than conscience. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. Like, share, and turn on notifications, because what you're about to hear isn't just a story. It's a confession. I met him that evening at his apartment. The air smelled like new cologne and old promises. He opened the door shirtless, the faintest smirk playing on his lips. And for a moment, my legs forgot what loyalty meant. "Come in," he said. And that was the moment my peace began to crumble. We didn't speak much. Words weren't needed, not when silence was already screaming louder than reason. He looked at me as though he had memorized every part of my hesitation. His fingers traced my face, and I swear, my breath betrayed me. When his lips found mine, it wasn't gentle. It was need, raw, urgent, and reckless. It was like the world folded into that kiss. And all the rules I had ever lived by turned to dust under his hands. He lifted me effortlessly, pressed me against the wall. And suddenly, my name sounded different in his voice. It wasn't a name anymore, it was a prayer, a curse, a plea. I knew I should have stopped. But the truth? I didn't want to. Because in that chaos, I felt alive. Later, when I returned home, the guilt came back with me. It crept into my shower, sat beside my reflection in the mirror. And asked the question I couldn't answer, was it worth it? And the scariest part was that I didn't know. If you're still watching, take a breath. These confessions aren't to glorify mistakes, but to show you how fragile desire can be. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because the next chapter? That's when everything I tried to hide started showing on my face. I thought love was supposed to heal, not drain. But every time his hands found me, I could feel a piece of my sanity slip away, quietly, like water through a cracked glass. His text still came at midnight, short, commanding. "You awake?" And I always was. Not because I wanted to be, but because my body remembered him. The ache of his absence was louder than the silence of my home. I knew what it meant to be wanted, but this was being owned. When he arrived that night, rain sliding down his shirt, I stood at the door trembling. My husband was out of town again, and guilt had lost its sting months ago. He didn't speak. He just reached for me, his palms rough, his scent a dangerous mix of rain and sin. "You missed me," he whispered. I didn't reply. My silence was his permission. And in that quiet, his lips devoured the truth I could no longer tell myself. Every breath I took belonged to him. Every moan, every glance, every lie I rehearsed the next morning, all for him. But that night was different. After the storm between us calmed, he looked at me and said something that froze my blood. "I think it's time we stop pretending you're mine." I turned, confused. "What do you mean?" He smiled, that cruel, breathtaking smile that once melted my resolve. "You were a beautiful distraction, but you're not my peace. You're my chaos." The room fell silent. My world, collapsing softly. He left before sunrise. And for the first time, I didn't run to the window to watch him leave. I sat on the cold floor, clutching the sheet that still carried his scent, realizing that I had loved a man who only came to me to escape himself. Soft sigh, voice slows. But I was the one who vanished instead. Piece by piece. Heartbeat by heartbeat. Kiss mark before I take you into the final chapter, where peace meets its consequence. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, tap like, and share this story if it touched something deep inside you. Because what comes next will shatter every illusion of love you thought you knew. The silence after him was louder than any of his words. The kind that hums through your veins like a memory refusing to fade. For weeks, I woke up reaching for a presence that no longer existed, an illusion that had already turned to smoke. His smell lingered on my pillow, his voice still echoed in my ears, but the peace he promised me had long been stolen. And I let him. I allowed his chaos to become my calm. His body, my escape. His lies, my lullaby. Before I continue, my beautiful listeners, if this story has pulled at your heart the way his touch once did mine, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and turn on the notification bell. More stories like this, true confessions, real heat, deeper emotion, drop every week. Kiss mark. He came into my world like sunlight through a cracked window, warm but fleeting. He didn't just want me, he wanted to own the silence between my words. But when the thrill faded, so did his tenderness. When I needed comfort, he gave me confusion. When I needed love, he offered me lust. And by the time I realized the difference, I had already lost myself trying to make him stay. His absence wasn't quiet, it screamed in every corner of my mind. I found myself replaying moments I should have erased, the way he held me as if I was both the prize and the punishment. The way I trembled, not from passion anymore, but from exhaustion, from trying to heal a man who enjoyed watching me break. There was one night I'll never forget, the night I saw his reflection in the mirror, not as the man who loved me, but as the shadow who fed off my light. He smiled while I cried. He touched me, even when my heart screamed to stop. He whispered words that used to melt me, now they burned. That was when I knew, his love was never meant to bring peace. It was designed to take it. Somewhere in the chaos, I began to rebuild. Piece by piece. Pain by pain. I started to remember who I was before him, before the noise, before the ache. The woman who laughed without needing validation. The woman who loved herself louder than his approval. It took time, but I found my rhythm again, not in his arms, but in my solitude. And when he called one night, just to say he missed me, I didn't answer. Because missing me was never his problem. Respecting me was. To every woman listening now, I'll say this, sometimes love doesn't walk into your life to heal you. Sometimes it walks in to test how much of yourself you're willing to lose for someone who never deserved you. And me? I lost enough to finally know my worth. He entered my life, yes. But he also taught me the power of walking away, even when it hurts. Because peace isn't found in his arms anymore. It's found in my own reflectee. I wish I could tell you that it all ended quietly. That after he walked out of my life, I went back to being the woman I used to be. But truth? He didn't just leave, he left his presence everywhere. In my skin. In my memory. In my pulse that still beats to his rhythm whenever the night gets too lonely. I remember his last night vividly, how his hands trembled when they held me, how his breath painted my neck, whispering, "This is wrong, but you feel too right." And I, foolishly drunk on desire, whispered back, "Then let's stay wrong together." He entered my life like a savior, but he left like a storm, violent, reckless, unforgettable. And now, every time I close my eyes, I still feel him, not as a man, but as a memory that burns. Maybe that's the punishment for chasing what felt too good to be true. You don't get to keep it. You only get to ache for it. So here I am. Anonymous. Confessing to strangers who might understand. Telling you that sometimes the person who brings you pleasure will also be the reason you forget how to find peace. Kiss mark if you've ever loved someone who became your undoing, hit that like button right now. Revolving Hearts, don't forget to subscribe for more true stories of love, lust, and betrayal, stories that speak the words our lips are too afraid to say aloud. Because this chaos of emotion, is not just my story. It's ours. Every woman who loved too hard, forgave too fast, and fell for the wrong man at the right time. He entered my life. Then erased my peace. But what he didn't know is that from the ashes of his absence, I found my voice. Studio Microphone, subscribe now, turn on the bell, and join me again. Because next time, I'll tell you how another wrong kiss almost led me to redemption.